Hey gang, Ronan here. As you can see in this game, I'm playing the Tier 8 Dutch cruiser Haarlem. As far as matchmaking, well, matchmaking's pretty good. This is a mixed tier match with 8, 7, and 6 represented. There are CVs in the game, but they are Tier 6 CVs, which means that probably not going to have too rough of a time shooting down some planes. And in fact, just to kind of give you a rundown, this game ended up being a base XP 1989 base XP game. Shot down a total of 49 of these tier 6 planes. Ended up with a Kraken, 5 kills. A little over 92,000 damage, I think. 110 shell hits. Started 7 fires. I'll explain that a little bit further here in a minute. And landed 18 bomb hits with the airstrikes. Now, why do I tell you all that up front? Well, I want to give you some idea of, at least as far as I'm concerned, what reasonable expectations are for not just the Haarlem, but for this line. Now, you can see, if you look toward the bottom of the screen, you can see where I've got AP selected, and just above that, you'll see 3 turrets, right? 1, 2, and 3. And then just above that, you can see what is the airstrike loading up. 23 seconds remain, 22, 21. And there's the first of the aircraft shot down. Now, there are, as you go up in the line, there are more potential airstrikes on each of the ships to a point. There are more bombers in the airstrike, dropping more bombs. So you can see the first airstrike is ready to go, and then you got a minute and a half until you can launch the second airstrike. And I think that's also true of the Johan de Witt, which is the Tier 9, and then then from there you move into the Tier 10. But why am I explaining all this? Because I want to give you some idea of what is, at least in my opinion, and with my limited ability, what is possible with these ships, but also what is probably not going to work very well. So I'll start with probably not going to work very well. Pushing up and playing more of a traditional cruiser role where you can maybe open water gunboat and smack things with kind of long range fire due to a relatively quick reload. All that's kind of out the window. And why do I say that? Well, you've got a couple things that are working against you in this ship line. One is you have a pretty long gun reload, which you'll see here in a second. I'm going to put some shells on this Shiratsu, or try. I'm expecting he's going to turn out. But you can see that the shell reload was about 15 seconds, right? And that's a fairly long reload. Now, it wouldn't be too bad if these guns hit really hard. But what are they here on the Haarlem? 203s? But they really don't. It feels a little bit like having weak for Ataka guns. I know that sounds a little bit crazy given this Tier 8 ship, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. I try to use it, again, I don't have a whole lot of games in this thing, but you can see that I landed a couple shells there on the Perth, and the Perth is just made of paper and did 1,482 damage, which is very, very little, and that's not gonna be very different. You can see I switched to AP because I was seeing some broadside there. A little bit more damage, but what you're seeing there really does, at least in my experience for this ship, kind of sum up what you're liable to experience. Now, I threw those out there just in the hope that maybe I might catch that Inducto back there, but you can see the AA going. Okay, so the guns are not very good. We'll just start with that. Pretty slow reload and not much damage output. It may be a good idea, although I don't have it here, it may be a good idea to take the commander skill that allows you to switch from HE to AP and back in half the time. Because if you're paying attention, there are going to be some cases where it will make sense for you to do that. So I got a fully broadside Ismail, land 2 shells for 960 damage, overpens, but that really was my experience with the ship. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of games in this thing, and only a handful in Johan de Witt, which I'll have a video for that coming up here too. But okay, so the guns are pretty weak, at least in my opinion. There will be times when you can get some really good shots with them, but not very often. So, you know, there's 3 shells landed for another 2,500. So I've got, you know, multiple volleys out for 8,000 damage, and I don't think my aim is all that bad here. Again, broadside Ismail, trying to catch him in the nose. 1 pen, 1 ricochet, 1,500 damage. So, you know, I've put out multiple volleys. I'm still under 10,000 with over 5 minutes into the game. Now, I didn't do anything with the airstrike to start, but you'll see that I've chosen kind of a central location, and I'm trying to avoid getting shot. I'm targeted. I'm going to see if I can go dark. Now I'm targeted by 2, and I'm going to go dark because although these things may have a little bit more armor than some other cruisers, it will not do you a whole heck of a lot of good. Now our Bismarck takes out the Ismail, and at this point, looking at the scoreboard, we're up on points a little bit. We've sunk a North Carolina and Ismail. The bad guys have sunk our Nuremberg and Sims. You get more points for sinking a battleship than you do cruisers or destroyers, hence our lead. Now this being a standard battle, there are no caps to contest, so it really is, at this point, just the points that are awarded for sinking ships that make the difference in the score. So it's still anybody's game. Now, back to the ship. The AA against lower tier CVs, it can be pretty effective. You know, I've only shot down 2 aircraft though so far in the game, but I end up with 49 aircraft shot down, and you'll see toward the end I'm actually chasing the CV. But the 5 kills, well, why do I highlight this game? Not to say that, hey, look, this is something I think you can expect on a regular basis, but, you know, because at least this isn't terribly boring to watch. That's really it. Even with the Kraken, that's a broadside Perth. 4 penetrations with your HE, and still couldn't sink it. Now he's got 1,170 if I can hit him here. Yeah, okay, just barely, but I got him. Sadly representative of what these guns do. Now, why have I been using primarily HE? Because if I am able, now this scene that I think he's probably got the acceleration mod. If I can land some bombs with the airstrike and follow that up with HE, very often if somebody gets hit with an airstrike, they're going to get hit with multiple bombs. And if they do, you can say, well, I landed 1 there. If they do and they get fires burning, sometimes you'll get a couple of fires when you really land a good shot with the bombs, which that doesn't happen as often as you might think either. You can follow that up with HE and get some permafires, which you can actually get some damage that way. So broadside North Carolina, 1,000 hit points, I'm able to finish him off. So that's 2 kills, but it was on a badly damaged Perth and on a North Carolina with just a handful of HP left that was sitting broadside, not moving. So I've got a total of 16,517 HP, 2 kills. I put a lot of shells in the air, but only 28 of them landed. Dispersion is not good on these ships. And those that did land, hardly any damage. Now you can see I threw the bombs out there, the bombers out there, and Bismarck turned immediately. Now, you might think, well, you know, these airstrikes, these could be really effective. Well, they can, but you have to do what you have to do with destroyers, a torpedo boat destroyer. You have to do kind of some predictive aiming. But whereas with a torpedo boat, if you're unseen, they have no idea that the torpedoes are on the way. I mean, they might feel like, oh, I better got to be careful, got to change course and speed. But with these, with the airstrike, the moment you click for the airstrike to take off, whoever's paying attention to you can see the aircraft take off and see the direction of their flight and know immediately whether or not that airstrike is meant for them. Now, there are going to be some battleships that have really, really slow rudder shift that might have a hard time getting out of the way, but they're going to do everything they can to change direction, just like that Bismarck did. He started turning the instant he saw the aircraft. Now I've got an opportunity here with this Eindracht, but Kansas beats me to it, and good for him. I'm glad that he did. All right, so you can see something is putting out a lot of shells. So we've got a Flint on the enemy team. So at this point, we are down to 6 ships. The bad guys are down to 6 ships. We lose our Helena. They lose their Gneisenau. And I'm thinking, okay, the Flint is in smoke. I'm visible for now because we got Colorado out here, and we got the Shiratsuyu. So I better fall back, and I'm just going to see if I can burn down this Colorado. And I'm going to count on the Colorado's terrible dispersion to keep me alive long enough to do that. I'm able to turn away from the Shiratsuyu torpedoes that I expected. Have to keep kind of broadside to the Colorado. I can't turn much more or I will be eating a torpedo. "14 seconds, I'll have another airstrike back up. I think I might be able to finish off Colorado before that. So we're 11.5 minutes in. I've got 36,000 damage. Has my aim been terrible? Well, it hasn't been the world's greatest, but there's another example. I landed 4 hits and did, 1,800 damage? 2 non-pens. Granted, it's a battleship, but it's a lower tier battleship. Okay, so this would be a good example of what the airstrike can do. So I land a handful of bombs. It does very little damage. And that's going to happen a lot with this line. And I managed to, with another 1,700 damage, drag down kill number 3 in the form of that Colorado. So at this point, we are a little over 12 minutes and 15 seconds into the match. And I've got 3 kills, but 49,000 damage. The red Bismarck takes out our Bayern. And this still is anybody's game. We've got a really small points lead. But the next few minutes, they're really going to tell the tale. Our Kansas is going to square off with the Bismarck, but Bismarck's trying to avoid the Kansas. Those shells from the Kansas are just awful to deal with, no matter what you're sailing in. So I'm going to try and get shots on Bismarck. He's trying to get shots on me. I'm just angling to avoid as much as I can. That's 7 shell hits for that paltry bit of damage. Again, the gun's not good. Dispersion isn't good, although I did land a few shells that time. But the penetration values are just awful. Now, I do land a fire there. Now, he knows right away that I've got aircraft coming. And I have to pay attention to what's going on over here, so I can't really watch what's happening with that. Am I going to get him? Yes. 4 bomb hits for just a handful of damage. And I'm able to drag down another badly damaged ship. I'm under 60,000 damage with 4 kills. And that really kind of is the experience I've had with this ship. Now you can see that the enemy CV is bringing in skip bombers, which they're deadly. So I'm just going to angle to try to minimize the number of them that can hit me. Okay, so the Shiratsuyu is headed the other way. He's spotted by aircraft. I know the CV is just behind this island. I had a momentary glimpse of the Flint, but I put shots out on the Shiratsuyu, hoping to help on that side. He just turned to avoid the shells. These are not Russian railguns. The velocity, I don't remember what it is. It's not all that great on the shells. And here's where I'm going to start collecting some aircraft, shooting them down. So I've activated, defensive fire and reinforcing the sector. And you can see I've loaded AP in the hope that I can sink the CB. So, to recap, this was a base XP, a 1989 base XP game. Not bad, but I was top tier. I've put a lot of shells in the air, and I hit 83 shells. I landed in and counting. But I'm at 65,000 damage. And I was top tier. I keep emphasizing that. These guns just do not do much damage. They have a slow reload, etc., etc. You've heard it all now. Now there's a decent strike. That's the first one, and that too is going to be pretty representative of your experience with this ship. Don't see any way to avoid all of these, but I do avoid all but one. So, am I saying these are terrible? No. Am I saying this ship is terrible? No. What I am saying is that it's my belief that you are going to be more successful with this ship line if you have the expectation that you're probably going to be playing a support role and you're going to do some mopping up and finishing off rather than really being a difference maker in the game more directly. Now, this is going to be over here in just a few seconds, so I will say thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll have the commander build that I'm using as the thumbnail in this video, and now we're just going to see the end here as our team chases down the Shiratsuyu and finishes it off. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, comments, love to see them in the comments section below. If you haven't already, I really hope you'll consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.